Today, I want to talk about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, how it was truly rigged, because I see a lot of people, including sports pages and analysts that I follow in the boxing and mixed martial arts world, combat sports, etc. And I feel like everybody's getting it wrong. So that's why I want to do this video. Most of America watched this fight. I believe it was the most streamed fight of all time. It had, I think, the biggest gate ever. So it was a massive success for a lot of reasons, but also it was a huge failure because most people did not like it and enjoy it. But I got to really weigh in today on why the fight was rigged, but it wasn't rigged in the way a lot of people realize. So that's what the show is going to be about today. And let's get into it. Dream Rare Podcast, Rare Sports Edition starts now.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody, on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble? So I know some people here, this is a political channel. I do hip hop sometimes. I really want to weigh in on this because I think it was important culturally. A lot of people saw it, and I just haven't heard anybody really nail it in my perspective. So I'm just going to get into it right now and tell you how I think the fight was rigged. First, I want to say, hindsight's always 2020, but I told people before the fight, I said that if it's not rigged at all and they're really fighting, Jake Paul is going to knock Mike Tyson out. Most people disagreed with me. And then I said, if it is rigged in any sort of way, then it's going to go to a decision. And Jake Paul is going to win a decision because he's probably going to go easy on him, or they're going to decide to really not fight that hard or whatever. And watching the fight, I mean, Mike Tyson looks super, super old. God bless the guy, but his knees look wobbly, like he looked exhausted. He's old. And, a lot of people, they don't watch that much combat sports. And even a lot of people that do watch combat sports, they were like, Jake, he looked bad in there. He could have done more. And, I think for the last 5 rounds, Jake was going easy on Mike Tyson. I think at any point he could have flatlined him and knocked him out. If you watch some of Jake Paul's other fights, his last fight, he fought Mike Perry. Even though Mike Perry's smaller than him in size, Mike Perry is one of the toughest guys in mixed martial arts. He's the bare knuckle boxing champion. Although it's a different sport with the bare knuckles, Mike Perry is no joke. I mean, he's definitely a hard person to fight. He fights perhaps like Tyson used to. I'm not saying he's as good, but he fights that brawler, get in close style. And Jake knocked him down multiple times and knocked him out. They had different gloves, but the point that I'm getting to, and the real reason I want to make this video, I want to get through all of it, the marketing, why I think it was a success in some ways and a huge failure in other ways. But let's just get right out the gate to why I really wanted to make this video. Every person I watched, they're like, I can't believe that Jake Paul didn't knock him out, and, he won, but it was bad. At any point, I'm pretty sure Jake Paul could have knocked Mike Tyson out. I think he could have flatlined him anytime after round 3 or 4. He saw how sad that Mike Tyson looked there, and he would have looked like a scumbag if he just hurts Mike Tyson. He's 58 years old. He looked like he could barely stand. He was eating his gloves, looking like Joe Biden. It almost looked like, and listen, Mike Tyson's a legend. He's one of the toughest and most cool people in history, but it looked like he was almost crying in the corner in round 7. It was sad to watch. It looked like Jake Paul was beating up on an older guy, and that's what it literally was. So I just want to get this right out the way because for some reason I don't hear very many people saying this online for whatever reason, but let's not get it twisted. At any point, Jake Paul could have knocked out Mike Tyson. He chose not to because it would have been mean. It would have been elder abuse, and this is how the fight was rigged. He could have hurt him badly, but he decided not to and just win the fight casually boxing. With that being said, the people beforehand, I posted this on Facebook, and 98% of the comments said, if it's not rigged, then Mike Tyson's going to win. You're thinking about Mike Tyson in the 90s. And this is the genius of the nostalgia marketing, which I want to get into too. I watch boxing. I watch all the big fights, whether it's Canelo, Tyson, Usyk. I'll watch, any Tank Davis fight, Ryan Garcia. I like to watch boxing. I'm a bigger UFC fan, but I'll watch most of the good boxing fights. 98% of the public will not watch the boxing fights. Most of the older generation doesn't care. There hasn't really been a figure that has made people love boxing like Tyson did, and Holyfield, and Ali and Frazier and all these people. The closest that came to me, I would say, was Tyson Fury. I watched him fight Deontay Wilder, and that made me a fan of boxing again when they knocked each other down. I think it was their 3rd or 2nd fight, but it was an amazing fight, made me a fan of boxing again. But the older generation, they just don't care anymore. But they see Mike Tyson, and everybody looked at that fight and thought, Mike Tyson's going to kill Jake Paul. Yeah, of course, Mike Tyson in his 20s and 30s and perhaps even 40s would probably kill Jake Paul. That's true. But it's like me saying that Bart Starr, who won, Super Bowl one, or Brett Favre could step on the field and he could compete in the NFL today and he could, fight a good college quarterback. Or it's like, it's just not feasible. So, I think the marketing was genius because it got people to pay attention. Like, it's interesting, even if it's a really sad fight that probably should have never been sanctioned. You got Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson, this 20-year-old that really people don't like because he's trolly and he plays a character, and everybody wants to see somebody knock him out. And then you have literally the scariest person in boxing history who in his prime was insane. Like, he was scary, he just brawled, he knocked people out. And all the older generation, they were just so, and I'm not trying, some younger people too that don't follow sports, they were like, he's going to kill Jake Paul. But I just want to be clear, the way it was rigged, I don't think the fight was like rigged in the sense of like the judges rigged it, or I don't know that they're like not fighting. Jake didn't fight as hard as he could have. I don't think Mike Tyson was really holding back. I think he gave it his all, and his all is very like not that much. So it's like, I thought I like the boomers, and I don't want to blame the boomers because there's younger people too. People that don't pay attention to sports, and anybody over 40 that really remembers old Mike Tyson. It's like he wasn't holding back. He's 58 years old. Roy Jones Jr. kept going, I don't like the way his legs looked. It looked like his legs were going to snap from him just standing. Like, he's 58, but Mike Tyson's a wild boy. He's been through a lot. He kind of looked like he was in his 60s or 70s out there. Like, it did not look good. And I want to, before I get into the marketing, I just want to be clear once again, this is what I believe. And I think anybody that's honest, Jake Paul, it's not like he like couldn't do more. He didn't want to hurt Mike Tyson. That's pretty clear. Jake said that. I don't need to hear him say that. I know that. I didn't hear anybody on YouTube say it. So for the people that are going to search this in the algorithm, here's finally somebody telling you Jake Paul could have knocked him out for 5 rounds. He decided to spare Mike Tyson because it was the right thing to do. Hurting Mike Tyson at 58 would have been sad. And there's never been a sanctioned fight. They should have never sanctioned this fight. There's never been a sanctioned fight between someone of that age and that age. It should have never been cleared. And for obvious reasons, someone, Mike could have got really hurt in there. With that being said, the marketing was brilliant. There's been better fights. There's been higher level fights. There's been more interesting fights. But the truth of marketing is it only matters to who really watches it. So as much as everybody hated it, this is the good and the bad in it. The good is it was the biggest gate. Like, people wanted to go to the stadium and buy expensive tickets for that fight. And apparently, I mean, I don't think the numbers are out, but I'm guessing it's going to be the most streamed boxing event of all time. It has to be. I mean, everybody was talking about it. People that don't care about sports. I'm going to watch UFC today with John Jones in it. I would have watched a big boxing fight if Jake Paul fought somebody else. But 98% of people that watched it last night, 99%, they're not watching every fight. So it brought people in with the two names, and I don't think anyone else could have done this. So, to Jake's defense, even though I do think it was kind of a scummy move, it's like if he fights an actual boxer, literally no one paid attention. He did that the other couple fights ago. No one cared. They care when he fights Nate Diaz. They care when he fights a basketball player, Ben Askren, or he fought Mike Perry because he has a fan base. Jake fighting good people, it's business-wise, it doesn't make sense because two things that people don't understand about boxing: most fighters don't fight good fighters. I mean, fighting Mike Tyson in his 50s is insane. I'm not saying that's normal, but most good boxers, even the best, your favorite boxers out there, they're not their top first 10 fights, they're fighting all bad opponents. Jake Paul already has a name, so if he's going to fight bad opponents, he might as well fight bad opponents that have a name. So there's not really, besides this fight, there's nothing wrong marketing-wise with what he's doing. He could fight no-name amateurs like everybody else, and no one would care. So he's doing strategically good business. With that being said, it's like this just kind of reflects our culture and what sells. Mike Tyson's probably the biggest selling pay-per-view. Like, I don't think even if he fought, maybe Canelo Alvarez is the closest thing to a fight that actually people would care about. But if he fights other professional boxers or even top boxers, there's no way it's going to make as much money for Netflix. So I don't know how much money they made. I'm guessing tens of millions of dollars. Netflix comes and they say, Tyson, we're going to pay you this much. Jake Paul, we're going to pay you this much. So they're both getting more money than they could possibly ever get in any other way because they're working with Netflix. And it's this massive event that's bringing multiple generations together and a bunch of people over 40 that haven't cared about boxing since Mike Tyson fought. So it's like, if you're looking at it from a marketing standpoint, there was no bigger fight to be made. As dumb as the fight was, as terrible as it was, as old as Mike Tyson looked, and as shameful as Jake Paul looked, there's the market speaks, and people wouldn't have watched any other fight. Like no one's dad. Like I had a conversation with my dad yesterday. We were talking about fighting we haven't talked about in decades because he actually cared because Mike Tyson was fighting. I told him, I said, you got to text me and apologize once Jake Paul wins. I told him, I said, if it's a real fight, Jake knocks him out easily. If it's a fake fight and they go easy, Jake, it's a decision for Jake. Like, and that's what happened. It ended up being the second. Not rigged like they held Mike Tyson back. He's 58. He could barely stand. He doesn't have the power. He had good defense, but it was just a sad sight. Jake could have flatlined him at any point. Decided to go easy, so it was a decision. That being said, it was in some ways a huge win for Netflix and a huge loss for Netflix in boxing, because when it comes to the good of what Netflix did business-wise, I'm not saying entertaining-wise, the fight was garbage. Business-wise, people are going to say, oh, that sucked, and oh, that was so bad, because it was. But everybody watched, even me. I watched. I never used Netflix. I'm like, I might as well watch this. You know what I'm saying? I might as well use Netflix just for now and just watch this. So it's like they're going to make more than they've ever made and get more attention than they've ever got. The question is, are they going to be able to capitalize and keep it? Because the things that went wrong, everybody's talking about it, but I didn't see it that much personally with my experience. But there were power outages, like streaming errors. People don't like that. It was, the entertainment was goofy. Boxing is worse than UFC in my opinion, with the timing of it and the pacing of it. Like it takes forever. Everybody's just waiting around. It's not very professional. With that being said, it's like numbers speak for themselves, and everyone's going to be like, that was a failure. Not for Netflix's bank account. They probably made so much money, probably tens or hundreds of millions of people streamed into that. The rumor has it that they might have beaten Super Bowl ratings. Like that's how many people watched it. So it's like, is that a win for a network? Of course. Now let's talk about the loss. It's a huge loss in a lot of ways for boxing, because I'm a UFC guy. I think UFC is way more interesting than boxing. I think boxing is just annoying to watch in general. I don't think it's as good. The undercards aren't as good, but I do tune into the big fights. This was one of the worst fights I've ever watched in my life. It shouldn't have been sanctioned. Mike Tyson, it was just sad. It was like watching Joe Biden like fall down steps. Like it's just like, get the guy out of there. It's just a money grab. He made $10 million to just put on a nostalgic, like one more time for the people that haven't seen him fought in 30 years and thought he could win. With that being said, it's like, did this do anything for boxing? I don't think it did, because now everybody will think of boxing like this. They're like, okay, Serrano got robbed the fight before. In my opinion, I don't think it was a robbery. I thought she was going to win, but I don't think it was a robbery. I just think everyone felt bad for her because she got the cut over her eye from the headbutt, which I don't think is necessarily fair. It happens, but she did lose. She probably won the first couple of rounds and then lost the last couple of rounds. So I don't think it was a robbery per se, but I did think Serrano won personally. But I think people are just being emotional because she had a huge cut in her head from a headbutt. So you want to root for her because it's like she's winning the whole fight. She gets a cut. Now she's losing the whole fight. You want the person who got the headbutt cut to win, because she probably would have won easily without the cut. But that's not how the scoring works. So I didn't think that was that crazy. But with that being said, are people going to hate boxing now? Is everybody that's never watched in 10 years thinking like, oh, this is what it's like. It looks like this. This is how people fight. That's not how people fight. It's not what it always looks like. And that was not a high-level boxing match. That was like a senior citizen sparring match. So I think they did a disservice to boxing in many ways. But what can you really say about it, where it's like, if they put on the greatest boxing fight in modern history, it's going to get less views. Is that, whose fault is that? Is that, modern day boxers' faults because they haven't built a resume like Mike Tyson? Nobody wants to watch them. They'd rather see Mike give it another go. I don't know who to really put the blame on, but the truth is like that people watched it and they wanted to watch it, but they're probably walking away thinking, I'm never watching another boxing fight again. I don't know that it raised Jake Paul's stock. I'm sure it made him a lot of money, but do people that tuned in to watch that fight, are they thinking I got to check out Jake Paul's next fight? Probably not. Probably not. Are Tyson fans thinking like, yo, Jake Paul's really good? No. The same people that said that Tyson was going to kill him are now saying, oh, he's old. It wasn't that great anyway. It's like, what do you want him to do? 5-punch combo him, uppercut him, and knock him out, and then Mike Tyson's on the ground unconscious at 58 years old? Has anyone ever been unconscious that old in a professional sport? I don't think they usually sanction or allow fights like that between a 20-year-old and a 50-year-old. So I don't, this is not normal. He had to go easy, or else like there's going to be probably some serious damage there. But it's like, it was a lose-lose for Jake. Everybody knew that beforehand. If he wins, he loses. If he loses, he really loses. But if you care about money, then you win because you just got $10 million. So it's like, I just want to make this video. I don't want to make it too long. I'll get back to my actual job. But I kept seeing all these people talking about it and saying online, I can't believe Jake didn't knock him out. He looked bad in there. He wasn't throwing his normal combinations. I'm watching like serious fighting channels that I respect. They're like, Jake wasn't throwing his normal combinations. Obviously, dude, it looked like Mike Tyson was going to fall over after round 4. You want him to do his real combinations on Mike Tyson's face? Jake threw a few hard punches. It's not like he threw none, but like he could have knocked him out. Go watch Mike Perry versus Jake Paul. Mike Perry's one of the toughest people in mixed martial arts. I'm not saying it was a great matchup or the right sport, but there's nobody tougher in mixed martial arts right now than Mike Perry. Jake Paul knocked out Mike Perry. You think he could knock out Mike Perry, but he couldn't knock out Mike Tyson? He didn't try. He wasn't trying purposely because he felt bad. We all felt bad. So let's just cut the BS online and be like, oh, Jake could have done a lot more. Yeah, he could have flatlined Mike Tyson at any second, but he chose not to. That's how the fight was rigged. I don't know that there was some sort of agreement or anything. I just think, seeing how bad and old and slow and, like just he was biting, like it was like Biden vibes. I'm not trying to be rude to Mike Tyson because he's a legend, but it was like Joe Biden vibes, him like biting his his gloves. And then if you're biting with a mouth guard in too, you could break your jaw. Like they mentioned with Katie Taylor had her mouth open. They're like, she better close her mouth because if you get punched with your mouth open, you could really hurt your teeth. Like you got to bite down on the mouth guard, or else that's why you have it, to protect your teeth, etc., your jaw. So like Tyson doing the bite, like if Jake at any point really hardly punched him when he's biting, like it could do some permanent damage. But that's what I wanted to say here, folks. So I'm just going to wrap it up and keep it simple. The fight was not staged, in my opinion, like, oh, Mike Tyson's holding back. He doesn't have what you think he has. He's not 25. He's not 35. He's not even 45. When George Foreman or whoever, I think it was Foreman, he won at an old age. We're talking like 45. Or, Tom Brady, incredible, in his 40s. Like, that's incredible. Tom Brady is not 58 years old. And Tom Brady at 58 is probably going to be in better shape than Mike Tyson at 58. And that's no disrespect to Mike Tyson, but it's like Roy Jones Jr. said, his knees look bad out there. His legs look bad. Like his posture is bad. The biting thing was weird. He looked sad in the corner. Like it was a sad sight. It would be like watching Joe Biden try to run a marathon or something. Like it's just painful to watch, but this is what people wanted to watch. So, Jake Paul spared him. Everybody that isn't admitting that, they're just lying to themselves. It was always going to be that way, just based on the age discrepancy and the fact that Jake is a decent boxer, despite the fact that people wish he wasn't. He's been training hard. I'm not saying he's going to fight the best person in the world, but he's not bad. He's actually a legit good boxer with some skills, but this is not a real matchup for him. But this is what people wanted to see. So everybody complaining, understandably so. Ask yourself, if he would have fought a better boxer, fight a real boxer, would you have watched? You wouldn't have. So, it's like people saying they want the food supply to be clean, but they keep buying the bad food. It's like, if you want better food, you got to buy the better food, because if you keep buying the bad food, they're going to keep distributing it. So, I get people's complaints, absolutely, but it's like all the people that will complain about this never would have tuned into a normal boxing match. Me, I would have tuned into another boxing match. So it is what it is. Netflix made a crap load of money. It's probably one of the most viewed sporting events of all time, sadly. Like, what does that say about our society, our Kardashian-esque society? The greatest sporting events nobody cares about. And then you get this old guy that used to be great versus a young guy that everybody wants to hate on, and you're just selling out way more than you normally would. So if people want better fights and better competition, you got to incentivize it. People say, oh, he's fighting Nate Diaz because Nate Diaz is popular and it's interesting. He's fighting Mike Perry. He's not a real boxer. Mike Perry has a fan base. He's fighting Ben Askren. Ben Askren is a serious athlete who is well respected and can sell pay-per-views. And then Jake fights some actual boxer, beats the crap out of him, and no one cares, and he makes no money. So it's like, I understand absolutely from like an ethics standpoint, but this is another thing I don't talk about very often because I don't talk about sports. I talk about news and politics for the most part. Every good fighter doesn't fight someone good their first 10 or 15 fights. You look at who Canelo fought his first 10 fights, or who Oscar De La Hoya fought their first 10 fights, or anybody. Look at their first 10 or 15 fights. They're fighting cans. They're fighting nobodies. They're fighting amateurs. They're fighting people with losing records. They're not. This is just how boxing works. UFC is a different story. You take it easy maybe for your first couple fights, maybe if you're lucky, but then they send you the killers. Like that's what I like about the UFC. It's like they don't have these crazy differences between the people. They just let the best fight the best for the most part. Boxing is not like that. So people always try, and I'm not defending everything Jake Paul does because I'm not like a super fan, but everybody tries to hold him to standards where they're like, why isn't he fighting the best of the best? Why didn't Canelo fight the best of the best in his first 5 fights when he was in his early 20s? Why doesn't anyone do that? That's just not what they do in boxing. They fight bad people until they get like 15 wins under their belt, and then they start slowly fighting better people. But you look at some of these championship fights, the odds are like 20, 30 to 1. You very rarely see that in UFC. It's not very common. So it's like boxing, it's normal to fight people way worse than you, and it's normal to take it easy for a long time. So if Jake Paul's going to take it easy business-wise, if you're his manager, you're him, do you take it easy, quote unquote, by fighting Nate Diaz, who isn't that easy because he's a really tough guy, or Mike Perry or somebody interesting? Or do you fight a bunch of nobodies like everybody else does in boxing, make no money, and get the same results? So I don't think that this is my other unpopular, controversial opinion that's true. I don't think his route of taking it easy is that abnormal. What makes it abnormal is he's fighting, instead of fighting like someone who's like 1-9 in boxing, he's fighting a wrestling champion, a former UFC champion, Anderson Silva, which is a good boxer, even though he's in his 40s. Mike Perry, who's a bare knuckle boxing, he's a little smaller than him, but that was an interesting fight, even though Jake destroyed him and Mike didn't look great in there. And then he fights Mike Tyson, which is the worst and most crazy, disturbing fight he's taken, yet it's the fight that everyone cares about. 90% of people who watched yesterday's fight, they've never tuned into a Jake Paul fight. So it's like, if you want him to fight such good competition and better competition, people his age, how come you never tune in when he fought Tommy Fury? It's like he has no incentive to do these things if all the people who hate on him the most aren't going to watch when he does things that are actually better. And then when he does crazy things like fight Mike Tyson, then all the people who hate him tune in. So just something to say with incentive. But wrapping it up and really ending the live stream, I would say Jake could have KO'd him. He didn't. Nobody's admitting that. That's what happened. Netflix made a fortune. Everybody wanted to see it for nostalgic reasons. I think they did boxing a massive disservice, and it's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouth for boxing events for years to come. So I think it was like a very American thing to do. It's like nostalgia, bad fight, random ass cheeks for no reason, like at a random thing, buffering, people mad that they tuned into a terrible fight. But 80% of people who tuned into that fight, they actually thought Mike Tyson was going to win, and they thought he had a chance, where I was thinking to myself for months now, I'm going to watch the fight because I watch every fight and it's interesting. But at the same time, I'm like, this is, even when he walked out, I wasn't thinking like, this is the moment. Right when Mike Tyson walked out, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't even like this fight. This shouldn't even be happening. Like, this is going to be like weird. So it is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I wanted to throw this out there into the random sphere of internet videos, because I watched 3 videos on it today while I was just chilling around, and nobody was telling the truth about anything. They were like, oh, Jake couldn't even land his combos. I don't get it. It's like, what do you think he couldn't have thrown bigger combos in round 4 and 5? Really? You think he was just so scared or stunned? At a certain point, I don't think Mike Tyson was even throwing punches. There were like 3 rounds where he barely threw. And when he landed, if he even landed, it was like nothing. He was gassed. He's old. So like, Jake could have hurt him badly. He chose not to. Good decision. Let's just be honest about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. God bless. I'll be back to politics soon. Appreciate you. Subscribe to my channel if you've never seen me, if you just find this video. If you don't, that's okay too. I guess it's your choice. Have a good Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk. For $5 a month, you can help support me.